Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Council's meeting at Rugby on the 21st of July 2020. My name is Councillor Bill Lewis, Mayor of Rugby, and I am the Chairman of the meeting. This meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being attended by members of the Council through Microsoft Teams. Before we begin working through the agenda, I will go through some rules on procedure. The web streaming of this meeting is being monitored by IT services. If at any point there are streaming issues, then I will be informed, and the meeting will be adjourned until such time that the technological issues can be resolved. If during the course of the meeting any member is having connection issues, then there will be a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the connection issues can be resolved. If following the adjournment the connection issues cannot be resolved, then providing the meeting remains quorate, it will continue. It will be deemed that the member with connection issues has left the meeting and will no longer be able to participate. For all attendees, if you have not already done so, would you please switch off your microphones and cameras now? For members, your microphones and cameras should be switched off unless you are speaking. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand using the electronic method. For voting during the meetings, please use the raise hand function too. The Democratic Services Officer will confirm the vote to me before we proceed further. Are there any questions before we move into the formal agenda? No? Right, we'll continue. I now ask our Democratic Services Officer to confirm the attendees at this meeting. This will be for council members only. When your name is called out, please confirm your attendance verbally by saying present. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moving through the names of members alphabetically, Councillor Mrs. Alanak.
Here.
Councillor Mrs. Abarrow.
Present.
Councillor Byrne.
Present.
Councillor Brader.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Bragg.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Brown. Councillor
difficulty logging in.
Councillor Kieran Brown.
Present.
Councillor Butlin.
Present.
Councillor Cade.
Present.
Councillor Cranham.
Present.
Councillor Douglas.
He's having issues logging in as well.
Councillor Miss Dumbleton.
Present.
Councillor Eccleston.
Present.
Councillor Ellis.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Garcia.
Present.
Councillor Gillias.
Present.
Councillor Lee Hunt.
Present.
Councillor Keeling.
Present.
Councillor Miss Lawrence.
Present.
Councillor Lewis.
Present.
Councillor Lowe.
Present.
Councillor Mahoney.
Present.
Councillor McQueen.
Present.
Councillor Mistry.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. New.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. O'Rourke.
Present.
Councillor Pacey Day. Councillor Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Councillor Picker.
Present.
Councillor Poole.
Present.
Councillor Ms. Robbins.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Howard Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Jerry Roodhouse.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Roodhouse.
Present.
Councillor Sanderson.
Present.
Councillor Shearer.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Simpson-Vince.
Present.
Councillor Srivastava.
Present.
Councillor Stokes.
Present.
And Councillor Mrs. Timms.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are you satisfied you've got a correct number for those present now?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can just check the list of participants for Councillor Douglas and Mrs. Brown. They're still not present within the meeting.
Right.
Barbara Brown is having a difficulty. I just had a text from her.
As is Tim Douglas. I think he's attempting to log in as we speak.
Well, we can wait for a few minutes if there's technical difficulties according to the regulations.
May I make the suggestion that somebody email those people now with a new invite?
Could you do that, Claire?
Mr. Mayor, I suggest we hold on for a couple of minutes or so to allow them to log in, and if they haven't been able to log in, we continue with the meeting.
Can we take on the suggestion of emailing them to give them a link?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think the link's the issue. I think it'll be connectivity.
Okay. I will give them a couple of minutes from now then. I could sing you a song, but I better not. That might be a good idea. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I apologise for the delay there. Anyone who's watching, it was due to a technical fault. So we'll continue with the meeting. Apologies for absence, item 1. Are there any apologies, Executive Director?
Mr. Mayor, we have apologies for absence from Councillor Mrs. Crane.
Thank you. Move on to item 2, to approve the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 25th of February 2020. I move that the minutes of the meeting of Council held on the 25th of February 2020 be approved and adopted. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
Mr. Mayor, there are some councillors that haven't raised their hand. So I'm still waiting for a few hands to be raised if they wish to approve the minutes.
Would you all check, please, that you've raised your hand when you want to? Is that resolved now?
So that's 35 councillors for.
How many are we all together?
I understand Councillor Douglas actually came into the meeting, so that would make us 39 in total.
Okay, so 35 for. Those against, please show using the raised hand function.
That's no councillors against, Chair.
Thank you. I need to ask then, are there any abstentions? Please raise your hand.
Councillor Paul, could I please ask that you switch your camera off?
I do apologise, Chair. I had a fleeting power cut and I've just reconnected, so I've just missed whatever's just gone on.
Right. We were taking a vote on.
There are no abstentions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We'll take that the motion is carried and carry on to item 3. This is a declaration of interest. Can I remind members that when they declare interest, they must also declare the general nature of that interest. Are there any declarations under non-pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors? Please use your raise hand function.
Councillor Roberts, could I please ask you to switch your camera off?
So I'll give mine first. Is to declare non-pecuniary interest in relation to item 3 of Cabinet Report of the 1st of June 2020, transfer of land at Long Furlong. It is within the ward that I represent. Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Declare an interest on the same item 6A.3 as a trustee of Rugby Free Secondary School and also a Warwickshire County Councillor, equally point 8E on the agenda as a Warwickshire County Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Glendale, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, I've got it now.
I declare an interest under the same item, the Cabinet meeting, 1st of June, item 3, as a ward councillor where the land of the field at Longfurlough is. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Howard Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor. I also declare a non-pecuniary because of being a county councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Maggie O'Rourke.
As a county councillor on item 8E. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jerry Roodhouse.
Similar county councillor under item 8E.
Thank you. Councillor Carrie-Anne Dumbleton.
Item 3, I'm a ward councillor where the field's located at Longfurlong. Non-pecuniary.
Councillor Peter Butlin.
Non-pecuniary county councillor, same item 80.
Thank you. Councillor Heather Timms.
Item 80 as a Warwickshire County Councillor.
Thank you. Do we have any others?
I think that's all of them, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I'll move on to 3B, pecuniary interest as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for councillors. I don't see any on there.
I agree, Mr Mayor.
Okay. And then item 3C, notice under section 106, Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax.
There are no declarations, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. We move on to item 4 then, Mayor's announcements. This is the first full council meeting in Rugby to be undertaken virtually using Teams and being live streamed over the internet. It may be a surprise to some of the wider audience that I am still here as Mayor. It certainly is to me. The measures introduced to combat the coronavirus pandemic prevented the usual electoral processes from taking place. With the agreement of the Deputy Mayor and the Deputy Mayor-elect, and of course the members of the Council, I have agreed to stay in post until May 2021. The last 4 months have been unusual and stressful in various ways for all of us. Officers of the Council and the whole workforce have risen to the many challenges that they've had to face. They are to be commended for ably and successfully dealing with those challenges. I add my thanks to those already expressed by the leader of the Council, the group leaders and the executive directors. The community too has adapted to a new way of life, a way of life that is gradually changing, but even now no one is sure when it will end completely. Many community organisations and charities have been impacted. The Council and others have stepped in to ensure that vital services have been maintained. I draw the attention of all members and the public to the recent increase in confirmed cases of coronavirus within the borough of Rugby. While the number of cases remains low, the recent increase is a reminder that the coronavirus has not gone away and we must remain vigilant. We must encourage all our residents to continue to take simple steps to reduce the likelihood of transmission of the disease. We must wash our hands frequently and for at least 20 seconds, use hand sanitizer when out and about, keep 2 meters apart whenever possible, and wear face coverings in enclosed spaces. By taking these basic precautions together, we will be doing what is right for Rugby. Thank you. I'll move on to item 5 on the agenda, questions pursuant to Standing Order 10. Are there any questions, Executive Director?
I have 2 questions, Mr. Mayor. The first question is from Councillor Brader, which in the absence of Councillor Mrs. Crane is put to the Leader of the Council. Would the portfolio holder for communities and homes update the Council on the effect the coronavirus crisis has had on the number of council tenants in rent arrears, and give assurance that tenants who have fallen behind on rent due to the crisis will not face losing their homes when the government's ban on evictions comes to an end on August the 23rd?
May I just jump in there? The answers to this question and the second question are quite long, and I propose having the questions taken from the printed answers. All the members have received copies of the question and the answers, and I understand that copies of both will be put on the website as well. So if that's agreeable to the questioners and to Councillor Lowe, we'll go ahead with just taking the printed answers as being taken. If you agree with that, could you raise your hand, the 2 questioners and Councillor Lowe?
Mr. Mayor, we'll follow up with any supplementary questions.
Yes, we'll do that. All right, that's agreed. Councillor Brader, do you have any supplementary questions?
Yes, please. I just wanted to thank the portfolio holder in her absence for the clarity that she's given there and the assurance that people won't face losing their home because of the coronavirus. I just wanted to ask if it would be possible. The first part of my question was about the effect that the coronavirus crisis had on the number of people in rent arrears. And while I'm grateful for the level of detail, I think it didn't really give an effect on the numbers. So could that possibly be added to the minutes of this meeting when they're published? If an answer could be...
If it's your supplementary question, I'm sure it can. And then maybe we've got an answer. Councillor Lowe?
I thank you for your supplementary question, Councillor Braid. I'm afraid I have no detail on that on the top of my head, but I am happy to provide you with a written answer.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. Question B, Councillor Ellis, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Mr. Mayor. So while, of course, I'm very welcoming of any improvements and activities that Councillor Lowe has highlighted in his response to my question, I'd just like to say I'm very welcoming of the JSNA report data that he gave me, which I already had, but he gave me and utilises much to to inform this answer. My concern and my hope, though, is that to the whole of the council, that I just want to raise this issue that holiday hunger has become a traditional event in some locations in Rugby, and to see it in Hill Morton is pretty unique, and it raises a specific flag of concern, which in turn impacts upon the areas that we traditionally see hardship in, i.e. Ben and so forth. So Ashlawn Schools deputy told me that the schools are dealing with furloughed and newly unemployed families, and that there were 70 bereavements at Ashlawn over the last couple of months, with about 7 to 10 COVID deaths. All of these children and their families struggle to get support, usually from social services, actually, according to the deputy. This isn't coming from me, it's coming from her. And items have been supplied to these families, to these children, by teachers out of their own pocket, which has included items like clothes, food, and items of furniture. Now, look, this is not said to be in a criticism at all. It's being said to raise an awareness of the issue. So what I'm asking is this. Since the schools have been self-organising and producing a local network which meets weekly, can this council officially recognise the work that's gone through with the school and contact Ashlawn and its network partner schools to inquire about what support they need, be it financial or organisational, beyond the government-sponsored programmes?
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, do you have a response?
I do. Thank you very much for your supplementary question, Councillor Ellis, and also thank you for raising these very concerning matters with us. Yes, of course, I'd be more than happy to speak to the school and indeed any other body in Rugby to see if there's anything that we can do to help. They're obviously very serious matters, and this council has always prided itself on helping those in need.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. We move on to item 6A, to receive the report of Cabinet dated the 1st of June 2020. In submitting the report of Cabinet, I shall call upon paragraph number and heading. If members wish to raise questions or to comment, will they please do so when I call the relevant item. I will be calling the paragraphs according to the portfolios under which they fall. Report of Cabinet, the 1st of June 2020. Councillor Ms Robbins, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report of Cabinet of the 1st of June 2020?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I so move.
Thank you. Paragraph 1, Finance and Performance Monitoring 2019-2020. Would you like to speak?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor.
Thank you.
If I could just give a little bit of a supplementary to the report that went to Cabinet. In addition to the forecast pressure is still at 4.1 million. However, this does not include July's figures, which haven't yet been collated. So we're hoping that actually it will be slightly less than that. We have been allocated 3 trenches of funding from government, and we have applied for homelessness funding, but are still awaiting to hear on that. We're working through the methodology of the 75p in the pound reimbursement, and more councillors will be given more information on that as and when we have it. However, the projected remaining reserve requirement is now 1.4 million, a slightly better situation than when the reserve risk assessment was produced at Appendix 7 of the outturn report. Mr Mayor, we hopefully are in a much better position than we thought we were, and I hope that we will be able to give a fuller figure later this month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any speakers on this item, which is item 6A?
We have Councillor Roodhouse, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Roodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I thank the portfolio holder for those? She mentioned the homelessness fund, and I did note within the report that there's a significant variance from around the bed and breakfast dues and temporary accommodation. Would you know that it's the same fund which Robert Jenrick launched very recently, which was the 266 million housing fund for vulnerable people? And do we have any idea when we might get a reply on that? Because that's bringing extreme pressures onto this budget.
Thank you. Are there any other queries? Councillor Brader.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, related to that, I just wanted to know if there was a contingency plan for if we don't receive the homeless funding and what effect that will have on the homeless people that we've currently got in accommodation.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, in that case, Councillor Robbins, would you like to reply?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm afraid I don't have the answer at the moment to Councillor Roodhouse's question. However, I will find out and make sure he has an answer to that question after the meeting. With regards to the homelessness, obviously, we are very keen to ensure that homelessness is brought not just down, but eliminated in the borough. And we will do everything we can to do that within the funds that we have. But I am confident that we will receive some financial reimbursement from the government on that issue. So I will let you know as and when we find out more. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Moving on, Councillor Robbins, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 2 of the report of Cabinet of the 1st of June 2020?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I so move.
Thank you. Paragraph 2, Treasury Management 2019-20 Annual Report. Councillor Ms Robbins, do you wish to say anything at this stage?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy with the report as it's printed.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers?
There are no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you very much. Moving on, Councillor Roberts, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 3 of the report of Cabinet of the 1st of June 2020?
I do.
Thank you. Paragraph 3, transfer of land ownership, Long Furlong Rugby. Councillor Roberts, do you wish to say anything at this stage?
Yes, Chairman. This was an action that was welcomed across the parties and secures a piece of land for future generations.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers? Councillor Alanak.
Councillor Ranelagh, you're on mute.
Very sorry. As one of the ward councillors for Rokeby and Overslade ward, this is a very important issue. Many of the local residents have raised concerns about the future of the field, and they've been particularly worried that it could be the subject of a planning application for more housing going forward. So I especially welcome this move and give my support for Rugby Borough Council to adopt the field and apply for it to become a Fields in Trust, hoping that this will ensure it will remain available for amenity use by the local population. Can the portfolio holder for Environment and Public Realm confirm that local residents will be consulted as to its future management? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? No. Councillor Roberts, you wish to respond?
Simply, I can assure the Right Honourable Councillor that we will consult local residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, I now submit for confirmation and adoption the whole of the report. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
So that's 36-4, Mr. Mayor.
So we've still got 3. All right. Those against, please show using the raise hand function.
So that's 2 against, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I've lost count. Is that up to 39 who are present?
We'll ask for abstentions, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any abstentions? No?
No abstentions, Mr. Mayor.
Right, the motion is carried. Item 6B, to receive the report of Cabinet dated the 6th of July 2020. In submitting the report of Cabinet, I shall call each paragraph number and heading. If members wish to raise questions or to comment, will they please do so when I call the relevant item. I will be calling the paragraphs according to the portfolios under which they fall. Report of Cabinet, 6th of July 2020. Councillor Ms Robbins, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report of Cabinet of the 6th of July 2020?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I so move.
Thank you. Paragraph 1, changing places, funding contribution and location approval. Do you wish to say something at this stage, Councillor Ms Robbins?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say that I think this is an excellent idea from the council. I'm so pleased that we're going to be moving forward with this, and I would like to thank everybody involved, particularly the the rugby centre who are helping to accommodate this. And I hope that we will see the results of this report actually built and ready for use very soon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Trying to see.
Councillor.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to say on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group of councillors, we welcome this new facility, and we're pleased that there was a stakeholder consultation and the submission received letters of support from local organisations, including the Rugby Disability Forum, as outlined on page 6 of the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maggie O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, our group would also like to sort of thank the officers. I mean, it's actually quite nice to have a good news story during these very difficult times, and it really is a good news story. I think we're only one of 2 sort of towns in the whole of Warwickshire that has actually got this facility, and it's put us in a good position because I think in the not too distant future there will be measures in place where all towns will have to have these facilities. So it's good to see that Rugby, as usual, is ahead of the game. Very good with the officers' work and very good with the engagement that's taken place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Robbins, do you wish to say anything further?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank both speakers for their good wishes on this. Obviously, we will continue to communicate and consult with people as we go through and make sure that we have the best information available to ensure that this is a very good facility. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lowe, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 2 of the report of Cabinet of the 6th of July 2020?
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Paragraph 2, rent arrear recovery, rent sense. Do you wish to say anything now, Councillor Lowe?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I will endeavour to speak up as several councillors have sent me text messages to say I'm sounding rather quiet on this laptop.
I didn't like to say anything.
I'd just like to say, Mr. Mayor, I welcome this report and I'd like to thank officers and the portfolio holder for their hard work in getting us to this point. Rugby Borough Council is committed to the welfare of its tenants, and I see the signing of this contract as an important step forward in terms of helping us to recognise those of our tenants who may be in difficulty. As the report states, since 2016, rent arrears have risen, and we have seen collection rates fall from 99.8% to below 95%. Furthermore, the evidence very clearly shows the resources we have had at our disposal in order to address this issue have been significantly lower than is typical for other authorities of our size. This solution will use a series of complex algorithms and analytical tools to predict which tenants are likely to fall into arrears, which will give us the opportunity for early intervention in potentially difficult situations, meaning we can contact the right tenants at the right time, reducing arrears and increasing collection. It is a positive and cost-effective solution to an issue which could well become more serious in the current climate, and so I move the report as written.
Thank you. We've got 1 speaker so far. If anyone else wants to speak, please raise your hands. Councillor Noreen New.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask a question. I understand these Mobisoft software actually generates automated letters. I'm very concerned about the type of letters that they may be generating. Obviously, with the present situation, many of our tenants are in very difficult situations, as we're all aware. And I just want reassurances from the portfolio holder that any letters go out are not impersonal and don't lack the sensitivity that we really need to support our residents at a time when really mental health is a massive issue. People are struggling and we really need to be supportive. I understand that's what's been said, we're going to be supportive. I would like to make sure that these letters that go out are supportive and not berating people and making people worried at a time when they're already very stressed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maggie O'Rourke.
Yes, I would endorse that. I mean, we've had a recent sort of example of standard stop letters going out from the county council around the sort of concerns raised by residents, and we don't want that. So I think reassurance that they aren't impersonal and they are sensitive, because there are a lot of pressures out there on our communities at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Jim Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My concern is whether that software can be used to actually forecast, to vet future tenants in advance. I'm worried that software which is predictive can be used to lock people out of accessing council homes.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? Could you take your hands down, please, if you have spoken? Councillor Allo, do you have some responses?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, to the issue of the letters raised by Councillors New and Councillor O'Rourke. Look, throughout this crisis, I think it's fair to say that from a communications perspective, this council has worked very hard to be sensitive to the feelings and the needs of the residents of Rugby, and that is something that we should all look to make sure it continues. So I can give my personal assurance that I will look to ensure that any letter that is sent out with appropriate sensitivity and respect for the people to whom they're being sent. As to Councillor Ellis's point, so the purpose of this software is to deal with existing tenants who may fall into arrears. It's not a selection tool in terms of the housing list.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. I can't see any other speakers, so I now submit for confirmation and adoption the whole of the report. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
So that's 37-4, Mr. Mayor.
37-4. Thank you. Those against, please show using the raised hand function.
That's 1, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So yes, are there any abstentions?
No abstentions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, the motion is carried. We'll move on now to item 7 of the agenda, Annual Overview and Scrutiny Report 2019-20. The next item is to receive the report of overview and scrutiny set out at item 7 of the agenda. The report concerns the Annual Overview and Scrutiny Report for 2019-20. Councillor Mahoney, will you move the report of overview and scrutiny concerning the Annual Overview and Scrutiny Report for 2019-2020?
Also move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Who will second the motion?
I will second the motion and reserve the right to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Mahoney, would you like to speak?
Just a few words, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank the officers and the members of the Overview and Scrutiny committees for the hard work that they've done over the year. Through obviously events outside our control, some of the work wasn't completed. And just to remind people what scrutiny is about, scrutiny is there to scrutinise the decisions and policy of our council and our partners locally. And it's done in an impartial way with no political interference and is there as a critical friend. And I think going forward with the momentous changes that are coming in the months and years ahead, scrutiny is more important than ever. So once again, I'm going to thank the officers, especially those from Democratic Services, and all the members who took part in those committees, and hopefully we'll carry on the work in the future. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any speakers? I've got Councillor Sanderson, but are there any others? No? Okay, Councillor Sanderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it is important to remember that overrun scrutiny is there by way of an Act of Parliament, the 2000 Act of Parliament. We are there to not just scrutinise the things that councillors want to talk about, but to ensure the voice of our residents is heard and their concerns are raised in the corridors of power. I think you will note from the report that we are changing the way that we are doing things. We're now looking at more annual reports rather than one-off scrutiny items. For example, things like air quality, public space protection orders, waste and recycling. By putting things in coming under annual review without fail, we will ensure that we spot any trends that may be occurring and hopefully make recommendations on any targets that may be missed. Yes, it will. I think certainly the enhanced training for members is a big help, but still we think we have a lot of work to do in terms of communications when we call for evidence and the reporting of overview and scrutiny's findings and recommendations to Cabinet. But I think, yeah, there are challenges coming forward, but I think we've shown that we're both resilient and adaptable as committees.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Shearer, you have your hand up.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mayor. I think, first of all, one thing we agree with all of us, that it has done a good job so far. It has been very neutral, and lot of other areas, cities and towns, it politically influenced these committees. But I was chairman for the board, used to be scrutiny board, which followed by Tom Mahoney, and I think that this board has always tried to protect the interest of the residents and to take items for discussion or scrutiny which matters to the borough residents. My concern, and is the Councillor Sanderson has raised this concern, and I agree with him that this is the only litmus test which we have to actually make sure that things are going properly and things are monitored, and it is in the best interest of not only the residents but also the borough council to have accountability or mechanism where we know that things are going rightly and right way. And I think whatever changes are going to be made, we should make sure that we should not really bulldoze the good work which this previous years this committee has done, and especially I'm talking about taking action on issues which are burning issues, which do come. Look, Corona now has come. Nobody knew this would come. If we had to wait for 1 year to come and to look into the report, it is too late. And people and the government made us stop everything to concentrate on that one issue to save people's lives. And I think we need to look into it very carefully. And I appeal to the leader of the council and Councillor Law to look into it. And he knows he's a very able person, and that we should not be really making ourselves going backward, rather than we should be looking forward to making sure we are fit for purpose. And we could only be, and also it will help us monitor our resources, whether we have enough money left to take on board certain things or not. Therefore, I believe whatever the new changes are, it should enhance and support and endorse the previous work which has been done and carried out by the committee on behalf of the residents. Otherwise, the residents will be loser, and I think we will be loser also, because we were not just left by the borough residents within us. And also on this note, I like to thank most profoundly the chair of the committee, Tom Mahoney, not only because he's a Labour member, but because his ability and way he handled this difficult time and managed the committee to remain solid and to its own agenda and delivered it. And the committee members and the board officer, it's very ably always remained independent and not dependent on the ruling group, but actually they serve the group, support the councillor on the committee. Therefore, everyone has been winner and deserves the support and thanks. But please look into it. Whatever changes are going to be, it must be in a positive manner rather than a negative or derogatory. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson, I think you can switch your camera off now. Councillor Rourke had a hand up, but she's disappeared. I'm not quite sure what's happened there.
Well, actually, the previous speaker, Councillor Shearer, put forward all the sort of things I would have said in a very eloquent and full way. So I don't need to say anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers? No? Then I shall now put to the meeting for confirmation and adoption of the report of overview and scrutiny concerning the annual overview and scrutiny report for 2019-20. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's 38 for, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, that's 39 now, so that's unanimous. Yeah.
That's unanimous. Okay, in that case, the motion is carried. We move on to item 8 of the agenda, to receive and consider the reports of officers. The next item is to receive the report of the Executive Director set out at item 8A of the agenda. The report concerns urgent decisions taken under emergency powers during May and June 2020. Councillor Lowe, will you, as leader of the council, move the report of the Executive Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I so move.
Who will second the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, would you like to say anything at this stage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only very briefly that that many local authorities in this country who have used their emergency powers during this crisis to a far more liberal extent than we have. I am pleased to confirm that this council has only used its emergency powers where absolutely necessary, and only then subject to the rigorous compliance with the relevant constitutional provisions. But I'm happy to move the report as written.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? I don't see any hands raised. I assume there aren't any speakers. Do you wish to say anything, Councillor, the seconder?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was quite eloquently put by the leader. Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, we'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. In that case, the motion is carried and you can all take your hands down. Thank you. The next item is to receive the report of the Executive Director set out in item 8B of the agenda. The report concerns the Council's annual pay policy statement under the Localism Act. Councillor Lowe, will you, as leader of the council, move the report of the Executive Director?
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Thank you. Who will second the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I will second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to say anything at this stage, Councillor Lowe?
Not at this stage, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very straightforward report.
Okay. Are there any speakers? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a bit surprised to be reading this section, actually, when I got down to the point where it talks about pay levels and multiples to ratios. Now, we're looking at 1 to 6 as of March 2020, and that's going to go up to 1 to 10. Now, if the average salary is 20,000, that's 6 times, that's 120 grand at the 1.6. So 1 to 10? I mean, is that absolutely appropriate at a time when this council is struggling financially? From my perspective, if we have been advocating cuts within services across from county and borough, and now we're facing an amalgamation scenario or a closure down possibly of this council to be absorbed into some new structure into WCC, we're looking at pay scales like that. That's highly inappropriate. And I can't believe that that we are going to probably vote this through. You know, at the current level, the executive director is getting £100,000. That's at the 1 to 6 level, and we're going to put that up to 1 to 10. How long is this council going to exist? This is inappropriate.
Mr. Mayor, if I may come in, the 1 to 10 is a maximum and not the actual. Thank you.
I can appreciate that. Thank you, Manny. I'm grateful for that input. I can appreciate that it would be a maximum, and I can appreciate that, you know, it's a sliding scale. But all I can do is react to the information I have been given, and that is really, that's the information I've been given.
Councillor Lowe, you wish to speak?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, very much so. I don't know whether you can hear and see me all right. As the executive director has just pointed out, this is a theoretical maximum rather than anyone's actual pay level. I can absolutely assure you and assure all members and the public that we will not be putting anybody's salary up to £200,000 or anything like it.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Douglas. Councillor Douglas?
Not doing it.
Mr. Mayor, we'll come back to Councillor Douglas. We'll move on to Councillor Shearer. And we'll ask Councillor Douglas to mute.
Yes, Councillor Shearer.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, there is a set criteria. First of all, I agree with the points have been raised concerning salary, but we must have a comparability at the similar councils, similar in the area and nearby, how they are going to reward their chief executive or executive director. And actually, you cannot resolve the issues on just on one sort of discussion or other. It needs to, and also I agree with that it is 110. It doesn't mean the 110 will go up to the, it could be ceiling fixed up appropriately, whatever the salary adjustment board or committee under the leadership will decide to do that in partnership with the opposition. But I think that this is too, until somebody could give me some evidence that everything homework has been done and we are the highest paying authority than the other one, then we agree with the comment and look into it. But concerning the other people's salaries and other, we should be all mindful to that people are rewarded and valued and retained. And if we don't acknowledge and value and retain the skill and experience of people, then actually we will be losing the sort of this personals who are able and able to deliver and meet our targets and deliver us within the resources. So my advice is we should be also have some comparison with that the other councils in similar size, similar population before we could look into it. And secondly, there is the question was answered very clearly by many. The 110 is the point, the maximum, but we don't have to go up to there. The ceiling could be adjusted. And I know when I was working for the county council, the scale could be up to 10 or 15, but it could be ceiling on 7 or 6 or 5, whatever we decide to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas, are you still there? Did you want to speak? Not sure what's happened.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and apologies for the technical difficulties and delay I just had there. Isn't the key fact, if we build on the points raised by Councillor Ellis, that as outlined in the report on page 8.2.6, isn't the key question here how performance is reviewed, which is referred to in the report, but isn't actually provided with any detail? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, do you wish to answer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it seems that there may have been a slight degree of confusion around the nature of this report. This is simply a statutory reporting mechanism, and insofar as the ratios are concerned, it does not refer to what anybody intends to pay any senior officer of this council. I can assure Councillor Ellis and indeed any other concerned parties that whilst we do recognise the hard work of our officers and we wish them to be rewarded appropriately, at the same time we are mindful of the need to keep a close eye on our costs, and we are mindful of the tough economic conditions out there. Regarding Councillor Douglas's point on performance, I'm happy to provide you with some more detail on that in writing, but in summary, that is a matter that is being looked at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's all been said, thank you.
Okay. Then we go forward to the vote. Those in favour, please show using the raise hand function.
That's 34 for, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Those against, please show using the raise hand function.
That's 3 against, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Are there any abstentions?
That's 1 abstention, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Before we go on to the next one, can I remind members that if they're putting anything on the chat, then it can be seen on the by people other than the members of the council. So the next item is to receive the report of the Executive Director set out at item 8B of the agenda. The report concerns the Council's annual pay policy statement under the Localism Act. Hang on. That's the one I've just done, isn't it?
That's right, Mr. Mayor. So we're on to item 8C.
Item 8C. Sorry, my apologies. The next item is to receive the report of the Executive Director set out at item 8C of the agenda. The report concerns a proposed change of membership of Planning Committee for the remainder of the 2020-21 municipal year. Councillor Lowe, will you, as leader of the council, move the report of the Executive Director?
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Who will second the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak on it, Councillor Lowe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only very briefly to thank Councillor Byrne for his service on the Planning Committee and to thank Councillor Cranham for his willingness to join the committee for the current municipal year.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? There was one hand went up, but it seems to have gone down.
There are no speakers, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Do you wish to, presumably you don't wish to say anything further then, Councillor Lowe?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have nothing further to add.
And we'll go to the vote. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is carried. The next item is to receive the report of the Executive Director set out at item 8D of the agenda. The report concerns the appointments to the 3 outside bodies. Councillor Lowe, will you, as leader of this council, move the report of the Executive Director?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Thank you. Who will second the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you wish to say anything at this stage, Councillor Lowe?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any speakers? Councillor Sanderson, you have your hand up. You wish
Sorry,
to...
Mr. Mayor, it won't go down.
Oh, okay. In that case, if no speakers, you wish to say anything further, Councillor Lowe?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. We take the vote. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's unanimous, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is carried. The next item is to receive the report of the Executive Director set out at item 8E of the agenda. The report concerns a proposal to commission a joint review into local government structures in Warwickshire. Councillor Lowe, will you, as leader of the council, move the report of the Executive Director?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I so move.
Thank you. Who will second the motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll happy to second the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor. So, members will be aware the government is set to publish its devolution white paper in the autumn of this year. And whilst it would be wrong for me or anybody else to attempt to preempt the report, there are some sensible assumptions that we can make as to its contents and the likely preference of government to move away from the 2-tier authority model which currently applies across Warwickshire. Contrary to some of the comments which have appeared in the press, my personal preference would be for us to continue with the status quo. And this is because I believe that the interests of local people are best served by their own local representatives. And whilst I do acknowledge legitimate arguments about the cost of local governments, I have tended to believe the best way to save money is through shared services and other partnerships, without the need for this council to merge with one or more others. Nonetheless, this issue has been firmly placed on the agenda by people outside of rugby, and it is therefore right and proper that rugby has a hand in formulating our response. And there are no easy answers for us here. On the one hand, many residents of this borough, including myself, would have reservations about a county-wide unitary run from Warwick. Similarly, I do not see that, even if we were allowed to do so, we have any obvious strong affinity with any of the other districts and boroughs in Warwickshire either on an individual basis. And so, in the absence of an obvious solution, and given that we face, through no choice of our own, the most serious and far-reaching decision that we may ever be asked to make, we are faced with a very basic choice. Do we wish to let others make the decision for us? Do we wish to be told by central government or by the county or by the other districts and boroughs in the county what form our local government will take? Or do we wish to be involved in the process of developing a solution? Mr. Mayor, I reiterate, I did not choose and did not wish for this to become such a pressing issue. However, the fact is it has become a pressing issue. And faced with that issue, I believe the only responsible course of action for us to take to do the best by our communities and by the people of Rugby is for us to play a full and active role in shaping the outcome of this process. Finally, Mr. Mayor, I would like to state very plainly that at this stage I do not believe we have sufficient evidence to make any decision as to the right outcome for Rugby. And contrary to some of the reports that have appeared, the moving of this report is not in any way an attempt to force a particular outcome. Far from it. The moving of this report is a means of safeguarding the interests of the people of Rugby, ensuring that they have a voice at the table and can make their feelings known in this debate. And for the record, Mr. Mayor, I do not know whether the report will recommend a county-wide unitary or not. Indeed, it would be wrong to predetermine the outcome of what must be an independent and evidence-based exercise. However, should the report recommend a county-wide unitary, it's very clear to me that in the interests of the whole county, this new council, for that is what it will be, cannot be based in the southern extremities of the county in Warwick, a place which seems very remote to many here in Rugby, and still more so to our neighbours in Nuneaton and North Warwickshire. Very clearly, there is only one viable headquarters for any future county local authority, the geographical centre of this county, the best connected town in the United Kingdom, and the place we are all proud to call home, here in Rugby. And I hope that members will join me in recognising that adopting this report is the only responsible course of action given the issues that we now face. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I've got 4 speakers so far, Councillor Stokes, then Councillor O'Rourke, then Councillor Almack, and then Councillor Roothouse. Now is the 5th, Councillor Brown. So Councillor Stokes.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor. I am unable to take my hand down at the moment.
Oh, okay. Right. In that case, Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to endorse actually some of the previous speakers' comments. I do believe that Rugby Borough Council provides very good services to the people of Rugby, and yes, it's not something that we were expecting to happen. It has been thrusted on us, and I would also absolutely endorse that if, well, not if, when this happens, that the new centre of the world should be in Rugby, because it absolutely makes sense, given it's it will be a new authority. That said, I mean, there is no doubt at all that centralised government has enabled deep regional inequalities, and I do recognise that. And as a result of that, many parts of England have missed out. However, the problem at the moment with so-called devolution, it's so far been a deeply flawed process, which has been controlled by central government, or should I say by Dominic Cummings, to the exclusion of many people and communities. This is clearly not good, and on top of that, I'm extremely concerned at the pace of these changes at a time when local government officers up and down this country have been fully engaged in defending our communities against coronavirus, a virus that is still out there, which we all need to focus on to ensure that we keep it at bay and keep our communities safe. However, I do recognise that we cannot stop this happening, but what we must do is ensure that we have all of the information, all of the business cases, etc., so we can make the best informed decision that's based on facts, which will deliver the best outcomes for all the Rugby residents. So we will support the recommendations on that basis. Well, I will. Recognising that, you know, this is inevitable and you know, it is going to happen. I think what is really crucial is that we make sure in the future that local voices are heard still. And I think the best way of us doing that is moving forward with a town council for Rugby. I truly believe that a town council would be committed to regenerating the town centre and transforming it into a place which makes local people feel very proud of, and a place where they want to live. With a town council whose members live in the town, we can focus on building a destination place that's buzzing with free activities held in our libraries, museum, art galleries, parks and open spaces. We need to do this and support our local independent businesses to ensure that our local high street is thriving and more people visit shops and local businesses than ever before. I have to say, you know, we don't choose to be in this situation. We have been pushed into it. I would, you know, prefer that we could stay stay as we are, but clearly that's not going to happen. So we will be working as hard as we can to ensure that we do have a local council in the future that will sort of represent the views of local people. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got 5 other speakers. Next one is Councillor Glendale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Like lots of others, I feel that I don't know enough at the moment, and I need to know a lot more. This is a very complicated and very important decision that I don't want to make without having all the information and being able to look at it properly, the implications for and the implications against each choice. I worked in mental health where we had a north-south divide, and putting us with Nuneaton, Bedworth, Coleshill and Atherstone just didn't work effectively. I didn't know the clients like I did when I worked in Rugby, and that's my fear, that taking us away from the local, as Mrs. O'Rourke, Councillor O'Rourke said, taking us away from the local, we lose a lot of the knowledge and I suppose the infrastructure, the networking that we have at the moment. So I will be supporting this. I think we need to have the review, and I personally want to know a lot more about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roodhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is one of those things, and I can remember Gordon Collett talking about this some years ago, and about Nuneaton, North Warwickshire and others. My starting point is that it's clear that number 10 and Downing Street are driving this through. Anybody that's listened to Simon Clarke, Secretary of State, will hear the voices coming through. And the Secretary of State is clear that he wants pace, and the devolution paper will come in September down the line. So whatever's going to happen is going to happen quite quickly. But we need, as Rugby residents, to be clear on the evidence and have that evidence in front of us to do that. And I would agree with Councillor O'Rourke that places like Rugby Town, which are not parish, need to investigate Rugby Town Council going forward and look at those options. That's why I welcome that we talk with WALC, as in recommendation 1, to do that. And we also look at what extra devolution could be given to other parishes as well going forward. Accountability, local responsiveness, it's got to be key to the services that are going to be delivered by whoever does it. And I want to see that evidence base landing down squarely and firmly. But I also know that this is going to cause a lot of angst and agony, not only in Rugby, but across the whole of Warwickshire as this process goes through. But before I come to any full decision about it, it's got to be evidence-based, and it's got to be driven with the business case, which is landed in front of me to do that. And whether that's 2 or 3 documents, I'm not sure at the moment, but it does look like there will be at least 2 documents, one from the county and possibly this one as well. What I would say to the leader is, can you please ensure that other groups see the terms of reference and are fully involved in that terms of reference to ensure that we can make sure that those representations are in there. And that also, we have, I believe, a council meeting which is penciled in for October, which is where this will come back. And if he could confirm that in his summing up when it comes to the end of this debate. But I'll be supporting the recommendation because we do need that evidence and business case brought to us.
Thank you, Councillor Woodhouse. Councillor Kieran Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's on my camera. I'd just like to welcome this proposal because I'm very conscious that there can be no democratic deficit in Rugby. If we are going to be part of a new process, we have to be part of that consultation. There are some people who rightly argue, what do we actually have in common with Nuneaton, with Stratford? We have to be part of that consultation. The county is a big cake, and we have to have the opportunity to at least have a slice. You know, localism cannot be done away with. I know it's a word that's bandied around somewhat, but we can't have a situation where one community is excluded or one community, doesn't wholly get what it wants. You know, in this circumstance and with reform, you can't wholly please everybody. I am wary, very wary, and I think we should all be wary of things that have happened in places like Northamptonshire and councils being carved up. But I would ask the leader to, whatever happens, because this, we can ask to be part of the process, but at the end of the day, this goes beyond all of us. If he could please keep us informed with that, I will support this motion tonight. And those are my thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Mike Brader.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a general point. I think, as Councillor Lowe said, this has been foisted upon us, but what I would say is that really the central problem that's facing local government in this country is the amount of money that's been slashed from the budgets over the years. I think the Local Government Association estimated that about £15 billion had been cut from central funding to local authorities in the last 10 years. So really, for me, that's the issue, is the amount of cuts that are happening, not the structures of the organisations that are faced to deal with those cuts. But turning more specifically to the report that's in front of us, I just wondered if any clarity could be offered on what it is exactly that's going to be happening with this review, because it seems to me that what's been proposed is a review of council structures in partnership with those councils that have those structures at a cost of £100,000 or more. And also, what's more, the report states that there's clearly a risk that the money, time and effort expended on the review and the joint work may not result in any tangible changes or benefits for the council and our communities. Well, that seems like a lot of money to spend on something with that risk. So I'd be grateful if maybe Councillor Lowe, when he sums up at the end, could provide some clarity on why it costs £100,000 for councils in Warwickshire to commission this review, who will carry out the review, which is a really big, important point to me, because it's not clear in the report, as far as I can see, whether all the proposed participants in the review are willing to take part. Now, that's really important, because from what I understand, it's been proposed that there's a budget of £25,000 that will be put towards it if we approve the report tonight. So if the other proposed participants aren't going to be taking part, then will we have to foot the rest of this £100,000 cost for it? So I think some clarity on that's really important, and just what specifically the money will be spent on and whether it will have any impact. I think it's been indicated earlier that there's already going to be a report into this by the county council. So will we be duplicating work that's already been carried out in other areas? So I'd be really grateful for some clarity on those points. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker I got is Councillor Neil Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I will say what I said to my colleagues: don't panic. I think we should wait until we see the report by the Minister, the white paper, which I understand is due out in September. And then, subject to the amount of consultation time they give us, we need to get the council back together as quickly as possible to consider those options. I'd see little point in Warwickshire County Council becoming Warwickshire County Council Unitary Authority because of the powers that we will lose over significant services like housing and planning. But I also want to see what the government's putting on the table to offer any new town council. So let's not panic. Let's not be pushed into things. Let's wait for the government report and be ready to respond to it in detail.
Thank you. I've got one more speaker, Councillor Jim Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, I'd just like to agree and echo what Councillor Analak said before, and where she said there was concern of a lack of knowledge. I think there is actually an awful lot of concern through that lack of knowledge. The discussions I've heard about going over to a unitary council or joining with northern areas or becoming perhaps a town council. I mean, if in the latter, in the former, actually, we're talking about losing powers and coming away from rugby anyway. But even if we became a town council specifically, it would be, in my view, unless new powers are added through this Parliamentary Act, be largely symbolic and lack teeth. So as Councillor Sanderson just said, you're losing all of these additional things that you would traditionally be able to do. So what do we become other than some kind of symbol, even if we end up with a unitary authority everywhere else except in the town? I fear that lack of power that we would have, and like Mike says, 100 grand to get nothing. So how would we ensure that the powers we need locally will be there?
Thank you. Councillor Jim Shearer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I agree with every point, but one point was very ably put forward by the councillor, that we should wait and see. I have never witnessed in the last 40 years any time when the central government empowering the local democracy. Each time they eroded and taken away the power. And I think we should wait and see the outcome and really what comes in September, and then decide. Otherwise, we'll miss out, and people of rugby will not forgive us if there something is going to be taken away from us. Take anything which we have given up in the past has more detrimental effect on us. Take the parking permit situation where we handed over to county council, and what happened? They moved to 80 pounds, and the outcry, another thing by the residents, and then luckily Councillor Roke and other people, they fought hard and they managed to keep it at 25 pounds. And I think there are other examples where the local democracy could only be strengthened by taking into board the people, the local interest into it. And we need to consult widely with the people and want to know what the minister is going to suggest and what is the outcome, what is the best for rugby. I think we should wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got one more hand that's gone up. That's Councillor Ian Picker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I disagree with some of the points that have just been made about waiting for the white paper and waiting for central government to take the lead on this. I think we would do our residents a disservice not to try and hit the ground running. This, obviously, as the leader has made clear, this isn't the situation we wanted to be in, but events are in danger of overtaking us. So I think we need to approve this report this evening, and we need to put ourselves at the forefront of the conversation, because the conversation is going to happen. It's already happening, and I don't think wait and see is a good idea for our residents. So I disagree on that front, and I will be supporting the report this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding of what this report's about is looking at what the options are open to us once this white paper comes out. We're not being asked to decide on what the future structure is going to be. And I agree with some of the other speakers that we need all the information and the evidence before that white paper comes out. So I'm going to support this report, basically because I need to know what the options are. And unless I've misunderstood the leader of the council, we're not being asked to make a decision on what we see the future, just to see what's over the horizon. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any more hands up. Are there any more speakers? No? Okay. Would the seconder want to speak?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Obviously, there's been several speakers tonight. A lot I agree with and some I don't agree with. Obviously, the decision is tonight is to vote on the report. But at the end of the day, we've got to decide what is best, not for us as councillors, what is best for Rugby Borough councillors. And I will second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, you have quite a few questions to answer there. We may even consider giving you longer than 5 minutes if you need it.
You may, I've taken some very diligent notes, Mr. Mayor, but I think you may have to give me longer than 5 minutes. But I've got all the questions written down. So first of all, I believe it was Councillor O'Rourke. Councillor O'Rourke, you made the point about first the pace of change. I wholeheartedly agree with that point. It is moving very fast, but it's moving fast because of forces beyond our control. As you're aware, the government's white paper will be published in the autumn. As you're also aware, the certain people at Warwickshire County Council have already starting to make noises about commissioning their own report, which will be advocating a county-wide solution. The second point that you made around a town council, yes, absolutely, as part of this review, we will explore all options and potential structures because, as you correctly alluded to, it is very important that we maintain local connections. If we then come to Councillor Alanak's point, and of all the points that were made, in my view, Councillor Alanak's was the most compelling argument for why we should vote for this report. Councillor Alanak, you are quite correct in saying that there is a significant lack of understanding of what the options are. Indeed, nobody at this stage knows what the options are. And that's why we need the report, because the point of the report is to get a clear, evidence-based account of what the options available to us are. It is not about advocating a particular solution. I then turned to Councillor Roothouse. Councillor Roothouse asked whether we would keep other groups and other members of the council in the loop regarding the terms of reference. I'm very happy to confirm that we will. This is not a party political issue, and there are many different views across the political spectrum from members of all parties. It is not an issue that I or the Conservative group will consider in isolation. It is a matter not just for the whole council, but for all of the people of Rugby. Councillor Brown, I'd like to thank you for your comments. You made some very good points, and you asked whether we keep the Labour group informed. Similarly, we will keep the Labour group informed. All councillors will be kept posted. And I then turn to Councillor Brader. Councillor Brader, you made a very good point about funding. There are some other matters later on in blue which will look to address those issues. But you then asked a number of other questions. So what will happen with the review? So the expectation is the government will produce a devolution white paper in September, and at some point not very long after that, all councils in Warwickshire will be invited to submit proposals. It may be there is one proposal, it may be there is more than one proposal, it may be there are no proposals. The government will choose from those proposals, and that's why it's necessary for us to conduct this report, because we need to have a clear understanding of what the different options are. So we need to vote as a council on which option we should be advocating on behalf of our residents. You ask about the cost. So the cost is an estimate. The cost is the going rate for a study of this kind. You ask who will conduct the study. It will most likely be a major consultancy business with a specialism in this very specific area. There will be a full and proper procurement process to determine who is placed to conduct the review. You also asked the question about the other district and boroughs. That really, it's a matter for them whether they choose to run with this. My hope and my expectation is that they will. If that didn't happen, we would then have to take a further view on what best to do. But I can tell you that my view would be we need the evidence, we need to know what the options are, and we need a seat at the table. No ifs, no buts, and that's why this report needs to be adopted. Councillor Sanderson, well, what can I say? You seem to think we're preempting things a little bit. Well, by the end of this year, my expectation is we'll be expected to have submitted a proposal or agreed to a proposal. I don't think we're preempting things in any way. This is firmly on the agenda, and as Councillor O'Rourke correctly said, this is moving at pace, and it's a pace not set by us. So we need to be ready, and we need to understand what the options are. And again, to use the phrase again, that's why we need to adopt this report. Councillor Ellis, you began by making the same point around lack of knowledge that others have made, and I hope I've now satisfactorily answered that point. You then made reference to town council, and I don't know whether, well, either you've misunderstood your own leader or I've misunderstood you, but I don't believe anybody here is going to advocate that Rugby become a town council. I think the suggestion of your leader, which is many may view as a very sensible suggestion, would be that if we take part in a wider unitary that is over a significantly greater geographical area, there may be a need for an additional tier of local government underneath to fulfil some of the more localised functions. Again, that's a very sensible solution. I believe that is what Councillor O'Rourke was advocating, rather than the replacement of this borough council with a town council. Councillor Shearer, respectfully, I must say that wait and see is not an option. We do not have the time to wait and see. Councillor Picker, Councillor Mahoney, I'd like to just simply thank you for your support. What you said was very sensible. I hope, Mr. Mayor, I've dealt with all the individual responses. I'm afraid I rather ran out of space on the piece of paper I was writing on, but I think I have covered off all the responses.
Thank you. Well, if there are any that you haven't, I'm sure it'll be pointed out to you, and there'll be an opportunity for you to answer in future. Thank you. Thank you all for a very, very reasonable debate and some interesting points raised in a very important subject. I'll go on now to take the vote. And those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's 37 for, Mr. Mayor.
37, thank you. Those against, please show using the raised hand function.
Mr. Mayor, we'll just wait for everybody to put their hands down and then ask again, please.
Yeah. Are we clear? There's one, right.
Yes, we are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Those against, please show using the raised hand function.
So that's nobody against, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any abstentions?
That's one abstention, Mr. Mayor.
One. Okay, in that case, the motion is carried. Thank you. We move on to item 9, notice of motion pursuant to Standing Order 11. In accordance with the Council's constitution, no motion or notice have been received for consideration. Moving on to item 10, correspondence. Is there any correspondence, Executive Director?
There is none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. In that case, item 11 of the agenda, Common Seal. I move that the Common Seal be affixed to the various orders, deed and documents referred to in item 6 of the agenda paper. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's 36 for, Mr. Mayor.
36. Would you all lower your hands? Still one up, I think. No, it's done. We clear?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Those against, please show using the raised hand function.
None against, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We move on to item 12, motion to exclude the public under section 100 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972. Under Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraph 1 and 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. I so move. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour, please show using the raised hand function.
That's 36 for, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Would you please all lower your hands? I think we're clear. Those against, please show using the raised hand function.
None against, Mr. Mayor.
Are there any abstentions?
One abstention, Mr. Mayor. Oh, no, sorry, it's disappeared. No abstentions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I think there was one abstention there.
Was there? Okay, we can record that then, perhaps. Before I ask for the live streaming to be stopped, there's one thing I want to say. This has been the last formal full council meeting for someone here tonight. I understand that Adam Norburn first started work as a trainee at Rugby Borough Council in January 1989. Adam spent a brief period elsewhere, but for the last 13 years he's been here with Rugby Borough Council. Adam was appointed Executive Director in June 2014. I thank Adam for the help he has given me in my position as Mayor and for his contribution to the organisation of Rugby Borough Council. I wish him well for the future. Diolch yn fawr a pob llwyddiant yn y dyfodol, Adam. I ask you all to please use the raise hand function to show your support of my comments, and that is members and officers.
Thanks so much, Mr. Mayor. Thanks everyone for that support. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege working for my home community all these years. I'm really going to miss it, but I know I've left it in very capable hands. Got a brilliant team working at the council, and I'm sure they're going to continue all the good work that we've done over the last few years. So I'm leaving on a high, really, in my opinion. I've really enjoyed every minute. Thanks so much for all your support and all your help and your companionship during this time as well.
Thanks
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, you can lower your hands now, people. All right, that concludes the public part of the meeting. Can I ask the IT if they would stop the live streaming and to confirm back to me that the live streaming has been stopped?